It was dusk outside an old abandoned school in Tennessee, and a cool wind was blowing, even though it was spring. I was meeting my friends after finally finishing my essay for criminal studies. My professor was a real hard-ass when he wanted to be. One of my friends, Toby, folded his arms. "About time, Maxwell," he said. "Ah, cram it, Tobes," I muttered. "So what are we doing out here?" Another of my friends, Deshawn, responded. "We're gonna poke around the school, see what's left in there." I was immediately overcome with a feeling of exasperation. My friends were always thinking of idiotic things like this to do, and yet I still hung out with them. Guess that says something about me, doesn't it? We all made our way to the back of the building, me bringing up the rear. This all felt like the start of a horror movie, as stupid as it sounds. Of course, if this were a horror movie, and a cliché one at that, the guy in the back of the group would die first. Even though I knew that shit wasn't real, I rushed to walk alongside the others. When we got to the back, the door was hanging wide open. I found it odd and said so. Toby immediately jumped to the conclusion that I was a nutter, and that this should be expected since the place was abandoned. He, Deshawn, and the others walked right on in, and not wanting to be left alone, I followed them. Why we had to come at dusk, I'll never know. Toby, Deshawn, and another of our friends, Michaela, had brought flashlights, so we split into groups of two. I wound up going with Michaela. Her and I took one long, dark hallway, and past row after row of lockers, some of which hung open, casting spine-tingling shadows whenever the beam of the flashlight happened to come across them. My attention was fixed on one such shadow when Michaela's shrill scream grabbed my attention. I turned, grabbing her arm out of reflex. "What is it?" I asked, somewhat unsettled. "Nothing," she breathed. "Just a rat. Caught me off guard is all." I let go of her arm, shaking my head with a chuckle before we continued. We soon came to a door at the end of the hall. Michaela reached for it, turning the knob, but to no avail. "Wait here," she told me. "I'll go get Toby." She walked off, leaving me in a room that had little to no lighting. I swear, the shit I put up with. I sat back against the door and shut my eyes. Might as well take a nap while I wait. The noise almost scared the fuck out of me. What am I saying almost for? I yelped and scrambled away from the door. Something was on the other side. "Calm down, probably just a rat." A rat that must really want out. And it must have been the wind from outside passing through the building, but I could swear I heard whispering. Michaela and the others showed up 10 minutes later, and I wasted no time in telling them what I heard. Michaela seemed concerned, but the others blew it off as me imagining things in the dark. Toby pulled out a bobby pin and began to pick the lock on the door. At that moment, I was filled with an intense sense of dread, as if something was telling me it was a horrible idea to open that door. Before I could open my mouth, the lock clicked, and Toby opened the door, revealing nothing but darkness. "See? Not a—" He suddenly began to scream. The rest of us began to panic. That is, until his screams dissolved into laughter. "I got you! Ha!" Deshawn frowned. "Not funny, man." Toby turned to face us, his back to the darkness, and sighed. "Oh, lighten up. It's not like—" He paused and began to frown. Michaela folded her arms. "All right, enough, Toby. You always overdo it. You ruin your jokes by doing this." Her voice trailed off as a trickle of blood escaped Toby's lips. His body fell forward with a dull thud. His back looked like it had been ripped open in several places. Parts of his spine were visible. With dread filling my mind again, I looked up and into the blood-red eyes of some dark form camouflaged by the darkness. The almost inaudible whispers began to flow through the air as the pair of eyes began to move. The form became slightly more visible as it left the darkness of the doorway. It seemed almost human, but its movements were disturbing. Nauseating, even. Michaela's screaming jerked the rest of us back to reality. We began to back away, except for Deshawn. He was shaking. The others, except for me and Michaela, had recovered enough sense to run, though whatever it was flailed a limb in the direction of Deshawn, and his stomach was ripped open. That's what did it for me. My feet finally responded, and I ran. I could hear Michaela's feet behind me. I hear linoleum tiles crunching as the fucking monster pursued us. How long had it even been here? What the fuck was it? We didn't even stop when we made it out of there. We kept running. Even as I ran, I noticed that the others weren't outside, and their bikes were still here. That's when I heard Michaela scream in sheer horror. I turned, and I will never forget what I saw. It ripped her chest open. It pulled at her organs with innumerable shadow appendages, or it crushed her skull and dropped her corpse to the ground. Screaming, I kept running. I never glanced back, but I also didn't hear it following me. I ran until I was home. I locked the doors. My parents weren't home yet, and they were going to yell at me for locking the doors without them there. But when I told them what I saw, they'd understand. They had to. I closed all the curtains, sat down on the couch. I was safe, hopefully. My parents came home an hour later, and I unlocked the door for them. They'd heard on the news about the bodies being discovered, and I explained what I saw. They looked at me like I was insane, and my dad smacked me upside the head for going there in the first place. I don't blame him. I'd smack my kid upside the head if he'd gone there. Hell, I was kicking myself mentally for doing it. The police stopped by an hour after that, and I repeated my story. They assumed that in my terror, I let the darkness twist my sight. I knew it wasn't that. That night, I climbed into my bed and turned up the lights, rolling to face the wall. It was peaceful. Strange, in regards to the events of earlier today. I began to doze off. The noise jolted me out of my half-sleep, and I sat up, looking toward the door. Nothing. Must have been imagining it. I laid back down, willing to face the wall, and wound up staring right into two blood-red eyes.